UFC 264 is lurking right on the horizon, and this is a card I feel like can go either way. It's a little less loaded than UFC 263, but it still can deliver pretty good. Although, looking at the early prelims, I do have some questions. We're going to start off strong with Yazhong Amoldovsky. Now, we have the 3-2 Totoro Yazhong taking on the 8-2 Alan Amoldovsky, with a 5-inch height advantage to Yazhong and a 2-inch reach advantage to Amoldovsky. Now, looking at this fight is a lesson in reading between the lines, because looking at their UFC stats, all you see are a bunch of losses. So you're not really getting a lot here from their stats. It's the opposite of gospel. They do reveal a troubling truth, however, with the fact that Yazhong has a 4.43 strikes landed per minute to Amoldovsky's 0.52, but both have two fights in the UFC that are both losses. Additionally, with Yu's loss to Rashaj Coulter, he was able to at least keep within range of Coulter's striking total and racked up 5 minutes of control. Not that it mattered, considering Coulter consistently outstruck him, ending the fight with a percentage of 62 to Yu's 52. Amoldovsky seems to be completely dominated in terms of striking and securing 4 takedowns. In the end, though, it's important to acknowledge that Yazhong is moving down a weight class for this fight. He was originally a light heavyweight, 205 pounds. This fight is being fought at 185. That does kind of make sense than why Amoldovsky is the favorite, but even then, I'm still going to have to favor Yazhong here. Just based on his striking, being able to keep it close, and the fact that Amoldovsky was so far away from the percentage total, it just makes me lean Yazhong. But you can actually call this fight the fight to stay in the UFC, I feel like. Moving on to Zumagulov Rivera. Continuing the trend of disappointing matchups, 10-5 Renegade Rivera takes on the 13-5 Zumagulov with a 6-inch height and reach advantage going to Rivera. Now both fighters are coming off losses and have a general tendency to keep it on the feet, and in that the edge seems to lie with Zumagulov. Also with Zumagulov is the fact that he is coming off 2 unanimous decision losses, so he's been consistently able to make it through the 5 rounds every time in the octagon, compared to Rivera's 2 TKO losses and 1 unanimous decision loss. Additionally with this, Rivera seems to be susceptible to takedowns, with a 40% takedowns defense, though in this fight it might not matter at all. That's really all to talk about, and the Vegas odds do favor Zumagulov by a fair margin, and I'm going to have to follow suit, just based on the fact that he doesn't seem to get finished, and his striking has been consistently better than what Rivera was showing. Akhmedov Tavares. 21-5 Wolverine Akhmedov takes on the 18-6 Brad Tavares. Tavares holding the marginal reach advantage and marginal height advantage. Now, contrary to the last 2 fights, both fighters here are coming off wins and looking to get a rebound started. Now, immediately looking at these two, Akhmedov has the heavier ground game presence compared to Tavares, who has the greater striking percentage, so it's the classical matchup here. The important part of this is that Tavares is 79% for takedown defense. Considering how important that is for Akhmedov, who in almost every win, I think -1 over Tim Bosch, had multiple takedowns. Additionally, Tavares seems to have the better finishing power here, though majority still come from decision. This is important because Akhmedov seems to be more of a grinder in his fights. Majority of his wins coming by decisions, mostly unanimous. He seems to control their opponent throughout the entire length, but if he doesn't, I think his game starts to fall apart. So really the scope of this fight relies on whether or not it goes to the ground or if it can be kept on the feet. Now, Tavares is the betting favorite, and I have to agree based on the better striking and takedown defense. This can go either way if Akhmedov is able to get it to the ground, but with a 79% takedown defense and Akhmedov's reliance on grinding the fight out, Tavares has multiple chances to keep it on the feet and win the fight if it goes all 3 rounds. Maya I. 18-7 Jennifer Maya takes on the 15-9 Evil Eye, sounding like a beholder there, winning the award for the worst MMA nickname so far and also having a 2-inch reach and height advantage. Anyway, both fighters are coming off losses, with Maya looking to rebound after a loss to Valentina Shevchenko, and I trying to end her 2-fight losing streak. Both come across as fighters with a focus on the striking, but there is a presence of ground game with both fighters. It's just not the central point of their game at all, it seems. In the ground game, I does have the statistic edge, 0.45 takedowns average across their fights to Maya's 0.34. It is a negligible difference overall, but Maya has shown the ability to finish the fight on the ground with a submission victory. Moving back to the striking, I has the marginal higher average landed, but at the same time, they are hit more than Maya is. So really, this fight is a good matchup between the two of them, and it's odd to look at because the fighters are so similar in all their statistics that the marginal edge goes, I feel like, to whoever has the best intangibles, the best momentum. And with that, I'm honestly picking Maya here, just based on her striking defense, which is one part of the tangibles. And for intangibles, coming off this 2-fight losing streak, I think she's desperate for a rebound. And is just... it's weird to say this, but Maya's coming off a loss to Shevchenko, a really good fighter. I's coming off a 2-fight losing streak. So coming off a win to one of the greatest versus just coming off 2 losses. I think the momentum lies with Maya here. Topuria. The 8-1 Wizard, who takes himself out of the rankings, takes on the 10-0 El Matador, and was honestly a fun matchup that sees a 3-inch height and 1-inch reach advantage to Hall. Both fighters are coming off wins, though Hall is the UFC veteran in this fight. Both fighters are a good ground presence, with Hall having fewer takedowns but showing great ability to survive and change positions on the ground. Additionally, Hall has striking in some sort of capacity, and part of it is avoiding taking the shots, though he does land less significant strikes as a result. So good defense, but offense seems to suffer in turn. Topuria is very similar across almost all facets, though he is more aggressive with the takedowns and seems to have the better takedown defense. Now, given how both fighters like the ground, I'm not sure that matters. And once again, we see another interesting matchup with Hall liking the ground game, but not necessarily being a takedown machine. He likes being on the ground, but he seems to prefer going for the submissions, the leg locks, the things very quickly. Topuria seems to be the more classical take you down, then work you, versus Hall's shoot the legs and go from there. The Vegas odds do favor Topuria here, and despite what I've said about Hall, I have to agree. Hall is coming off both 2 years of not fighting and facing some good takedown game. So Hall hasn't fought for 2 years, and now he's fighting somebody who's likely going to be confident on the ground and willing to take him down. Once again, this is a fight that can be flipped, though, because both fighters seem to be good at the ground game, and if you've seen other UFC fights, one thing goes wrong, suddenly you're on your back and an arm's around your neck, restricting your oxygen flow. But that's really it for the early prelims, and moving on to the prelims, these fights start to get a bit more, I feel like, interesting. To start with, we have the 14-2 Trevin the Problem Giles, trying to keep the win streak alive against the new UFC fighter, 15-2, Thrices Still Knocks Duplessis. I said that wrong, but here we go. In this fight, Duplessis does have the inch height and 2-inch reach advantage, and I honestly don't know what to say about him. His stats show a well-rounded fighter, 6 KO wins, 9 submission, and it's safe to say that he kind of stands as a finisher, given 15 wins and all of them are by finish. But at his only UFC fight, he continues this trend as he handily outstrikes his opponent and manages the distance well. Giles is very similar in terms of fights and trajectory, but examining his stats shows one key difference. He has been finished twice by submission, and interestingly enough, both by rear naked choke. He has gone against submission attempts in 2 of his last 3 and been able to avoid them and win the fight, but if Plessis is as strong as the ground game as he looks, and he's able to pressure him greatly, I think this is something that can be used and something that has to be kept in mind. And now, the Vegas odds have both these fighters dead even, minus 110 favorites last I checked. So I lose my easy way out here. And I have to follow, in this case, the veteran Giles. Plessis has good submission game, but it does seem as Giles has improved in defending it. At the same time, I like having guys who have faced the UFC's competition more when looking at the UFC. Sometimes the talent is equal, other times you get guys who have one fight and suddenly they're heralded as the next Khabib Nurmagomedov or Conor McGregor. It takes time, you have to face multiple levels of talent, I feel like. Price Pereira. 14-4-2, Nico Upkick Price takes on whatever the hell 25-11 Michael Pereira is. Now, Price takes a 3-inch reach advantage while Pereira takes an inch in height. And now looking at this fight, I honestly don't know what to say. Price is the UFC veteran and really hangs on to the swang and bang style of fighting with almost an even amount of strikes thrown and strikes absorbed. Price also shows a bit of ground game, but he tends to try and keep it on the feet and is generally successful with a 72% takedown defense. On the other hand, Pereira is just wild in both attitude and striking, reminding me slightly of the Diaz brothers, but heavier. He has the more varied game in this matchup with having at least one takedown in every one of his UFC fights, but in the end, both these fighters are finishers and definitely are looking for that fight of the night bonus. Vegas odds reflect this meeting of finishing fighters by having it close, but favoring Pereira, and sadly I'm going to have to agree because of Pereira's ground game. I like Nico Price, I like how he fights, but with Pereira's ground game I feel like will be the difference, because if Pereira can dominate on the ground, that takes away Price's biggest advantage of striking, and Pereira seems wild enough to just throw stupid stuff and to win. But now, moving on to Condit Griffin. 32-13, natural-born killer Condit looks to build on a 2-fight win streak against Payne Griffin. Stupid name there as well. Condit is 3 inches taller, and Griffin has an inch reach advantage. This is another hard matchup to pick apart, one of many on this card, I feel like. But to start with, Condit is definitely striking heavy with a decent striking defense. It is important to address this question surrounding his finishing power, as his last 2 fights were unanimous decision wins, and before those, 5 straight losses. I personally believe it's still there somewhat, but his striking has just adjusted slightly to affect a bit more measured style. On the other hand is the incredibly similar Griffin, who only really differs in terms of his takedown quantity and takedown defense. Condit does have some degree of takedown game and defense, but it's used very sparingly. Griffin seems to use it more often and to greater effect. Realistically, I see him trying to keep this fight on the feet, and I see Griffin playing along. It's another fight I feel like a finishing power. Vegas has this super close, and I have to agree with it. As I said, finishing power, both fighters are probably going to want to keep it on the feet. I'm following my heart and fanboy nature here, though, and I'm picking Condit. It's a poor gut feeling, but I feel like this will be his game. I feel like Griffin's probably going to come in a bit too cocky, and Condit's going to be able to catch him at the right time and put him down. But now, to the main card. First fight. OMalley Smolka. Oh wait, Smolka's out. That's right, folks. First fight is canceled with Smolka being out and instead fighting, give me a second here, Chris Moutinho for his first fight in the UFC. His last 2 fights being wins in CES MMA 61, Gotti III versus Ali, Alley, and Cage Fury Fighting Championships 96. Against Andrew Salas. So yeah, I have no UFC information on this fighter. Now, this is really great for him. It's a chance to get a big card. He'll probably get a decent payday. But this is not great for OMalley, who really is trying to make a push for the rankings. If he is ranked after this fight, I think something's wrong here. But there's not a whole lot to say. 13-1, Sean, undefeated OMalley, is going up against a complete rookie in the UFC. Obviously, I'm going to favor OMalley here. He's a striking heavy fighter, puts reach to use in his wins, and a vast majority of punches are thrown from range, often lead to finishes. Doesn't seem to have a great takedown game, but decent takedown defense and a decent ground defense, unless you're Chito Vera. That's about it. I can't talk about Chris Moutinho. Outside the fact that he seems to be very much wins by decision more so than he wins by finishing. 3 KOs, 1 submission, 5 decisions. And all of his losses do come by finishing. This is a fight that OMalley has almost every advantage in besides not studying this fighter. So obviously I'm picking OMalley here. There's really no other way to look at this fight. Moutinho's best bet is to realistically play to his game and try to go to decision probably. The issue is that OMalley is consistently a finisher, and that's where Moutinho seems to be the weakest. I don't have much to analyze here because I don't have a lot of Moutinho's stats, but OMalley seems like the clear favorite here. Now, O'Malley's probably going to get knocked out in the second round by an uppercut he didn't see coming now, but I'm picking OMalley to win this because, I mean, man, come on. One dude has several fights in the UFC, the other the first fight. Really feeding to the wolves here. But enough ranting. We're going to move on to Aldana Kunskaya. 12-6, Irene Aldana takes on the 14-5 Yana Foxy Kunskaya, which feels really weird to say out loud. 3-inch height advantage going to Irene and an even reach across both fighters. Now, Aldana is a striking heavy fighter and seems to be a bit of the swing and swing style since the strikes absorbed is about equal to her strikes landed. Additionally, despite having a submission win, groundwork and takedowns are not a focus in these fights. 84% takedown defense percentage, however, and the Holly Holmes fight, she was able to stop 9 of Holly's 14 attempts. However, with that 5 that succeeded, Holmes was able to get 5 minutes of control, so take that how you will. I bring that up because Yana leans heavier into the takedowns and ground game with 5 of her 6 UFC fights, having her scored a takedown with 3 of those being wins. Her striking game seems to be a little more conservative, with less strikes landed, at the same time less strikes absorbed, picking shots versus going for it. It's a fight with two interesting matchups, and I think once again, like a broken record, this depends on if it goes down to the ground. Because Aldana has a definite striking advantage, and Yana has been KO'd twice by punches. At the same time, if Aldana is taken down and Yana can take advantage of it, we go Yana. Vegas odds do favor Aldana slightly. I'm going with ground game favoritism and picking Yana. It's a super close fight. This can easily go either way. I'm probably taking a lemon juice shot for it. Now, onto the best division in MMA. I'm lying through my teeth. Tuivasa Hardy for the heavyweight division. The 11-3 tie skyscraper killer Tuivasa looks to keep the win streak moving against the 7-3 Greg Prince of War Hardy. Hardy having a 3-inch height and 5-inch reach advantage. Full of players representing apparently. Tuivasa is a heavyweight, and as you can guess, has propensity to swing and get hit back, with strikes absorbed being relatively equal to his strikes landed. He hasn't shown a takedown game in anything I've seen, but he is nursing close to 50% on takedown defense. I do think it is somewhat safe to call the ground game as not his greatest strength, but he has shown the ability to survive and get back to his feet. Hardy is also similar to Tuivasa. Looking at the Topuria fight shows this off, with Hardy taking the striking lead early, but Topuria coming back hard in the second with the ground game. He does have a better takedown defense, but he has also faced less takedowns in his fight, and Topuria showed he had difficulty getting back to his feet. Now, Vegas odds have this fight in favor of Tuivasa, but it is close and I see why. That being said, I like Tuivasa for this fight based on what I've seen from him. Hardy has improved, but I think the issue with Hardy is that he relies on being able to swing and dominate. And against a guy like Tuivasa, who this is his bread and butter, is swinging and hitting, I think Hardy's at the disadvantage here. Because Hardy's newer to MMA than Tuivasa is. So I'm going to go with the veteran to MMA and the guy who seems to thrive off this fighting style more than Tuivasa. But next fight, Burns-Thompson. 19-4, Gilbert Durhinho Burns takes on the 16-4, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Thompson taking a 2-inch height and 4-inch reach advantage. Now, Gilbert Burns is a rounded fighter, ability to hang on the feet, though it is definitely not his specialty since he is basically tick for tack when it comes for strikes, an odd coincidence between multiple of these fighters on this card. His ground game is definitely a strength, as he averages about 2 takedowns a fight and is able to hand himself well on the ground. On the other hand, Stephen Thompson is definitely a preference to striking and keeping it on the feet. 58% striking defense and 78% takedown defense. Very good at working the range that he has and definitely able to finish opponents with his striking. Once again, one of those matchups of the two major contrasting styles. So the big difference here is, can it go to the ground? If it does, Gilbert Burns takes the advantage because that's not where Wonderboy is great. If it stays on the feet, the advantage is immediately with Wonderboy, but it seems a little closer there. So really, I feel like the key to this fight is Burns making Thompson fear the takedown. So that leaves options for feints and making sure Thompson has to watch what he throws, because one wrong throw and getting him on the ground, he's in a poor position. If Thompson doesn't fear the ground game, he's free to throw, kick, and jab whenever he wants. Now, the odds of this fight are incredibly close, favoring Wonderboy, and I'm going to have to follow. That 78% takedown defense and great striking tilt is heavily in favor, and I feel like he'll be able to take shots that are going to catch Gilbert Burns quick and stuff his own takedown defense. But this is, again, a fight I see that Burns could easily win. Not like how I said Vettori could easily win, because that fight didn't go how anyone expected, but we're ignoring that and moving on. Now, for the main event. Conor, the notorious McGregor, versus Dustin, the salon quality Poirier. 27-6 versus 22-5. Conor heading in with a 2-inch reach advantage. This is the third fight in the trilogy, so there's really no point at looking at their last fights because no one cares. Also, McGregor's last 2 fights were against Dustin and Cowboy, so there's not really a point. They are, looking at their stats across both fighters, though, they are incredibly similar in every capacity, basically. The true difference is in terms of takedowns, and Dustin has the edge here in generating and going for takedowns, but Conor takes the edge in terms of takedown defense and keeping it on the feet. In their second match, Dustin had the one takedown for 1:42 of ground control. At the same time, Conor was able to have a minute of control as well. These two fighters seem to be completely even, but I think the big difference between these two is ring rust. Yes, they both fought in 2020 against each other. Yes. Okay. Whatever. But Dustin has fought more often. Since 2018, this is Dustin's 5th fight. This will be McGregor's 3rd. I only think this matters slightly given how they similarly are in measurable statistics. When it comes to heart, I don't doubt they're the same. When it comes to fight IQ, I think they're about the same. When it comes to actually touching the ring, since 2018, that's where Dustin takes the edge. Dustin's going to be more familiar. Dustin's going to feel it. McGregor can easily win this, but I have to pick Dustin based on the ring rust. It's a gut feeling, yes, but with the ring rust, I feel like McGregor is not going to feel alien in the ring, but it's not going to be the same as it is. It's going to be more pressure, more weight. It might make him stiffer. It might make him more twitchy. It might just throw him for a loop. But I can't pick McGregor here. I need to pick Poirier. Well, in the end, those are my predictions. For this entire card, there's some interesting fights, some ones that I'm really looking forward to, especially Tuivasa Hardy, because I feel like with one of those fighters gets a win, they're maybe one challenge away from entering the rankings. Goes to show how great the heavyweight division is, but moving on. This is a fun card, and it'll be really interesting to see what I managed to predict right, what I got horribly wrong, and if any of those people in the first two fights are still in the UFC if they lose. Well, have a good fight.